Welcome to the Datorama enthusiast around the globe. My name is Ross Jenkins. I'm the CEO of Decision Foundry and a Salesforce marketing champion. I'm joined today by my special guest, Vemo Ipen, who is the senior most technical manager here at Decision Foundry. A few helpful resources to help you get the most value out of today's conversation. First, definitions. Datorama, Marketing Cloud Intelligence, or even MCI, for purpose of this conversation, should all be considered interchangeable. 2, join our LinkedIn Datorama experts group. 3, if you're interested in learning more about this series, go to decisionfoundry.com/masteringdatorama, where all the assets will be available to you. And 4, perhaps most importantly, embrace the general community over at Salesforce Trailhead and find the Marketing Cloud Intelligence group. Series recap. Our journey goes back a little bit over a year ago, starting with episode 1, where we began with the basics of data onboarding, ingestion. Episode 2, some of the basics around harmonization rules. Episode 3, classification of data, labeling, categorization. Episode 4, visualization and some of the extreme use cases that you can solve by bringing in external JavaScript frameworks to further customize the visuals. Today, and finally, episode 5, Datorama's premium feature with no fee. That's Harmonization Center. But who is Decision Foundry? A certified award-winning marketing cloud partner. And for purpose of today, we'll focus on marketing intelligence. By the numbers, we've accomplished 600 Datorama projects to date and going. Although we have 140 employees, 50 of them are dedicated strictly to Datorama, where you have multi-certified individuals. And finally, 9 years of Datorama experience. But there are 3 things that we are known for. The first is that our focus is around media intelligence, and this comes from a decade of working across media holding companies, large agencies, and publishers. 2, that we're often brought in to handle edge use cases. That is to say, things that are difficult to do within the platform and sometimes hard to scale. So an example of that might be machine learning sort of outputs that need to be ingested in the platform, custom calculations related to scoring, or things that we can do with AI to further enhance the reporting we're doing within the platform. And last, and perhaps most focused on what we're talking about today, is around our signature approach to designing with data. This is our trademark approach called data experience design. And the way we implement this is by taking the underlying cascading style sheets, HTML, and JavaScript framework to create a decidedly different output. So as an example, let's look at an automotive brand. And in this particular instance, what we're really trying to do is to help us understand marketing's effectiveness on sales. You have a series of goal gauges, and we're trying to understand whether or not we're able to achieve those goals. We've leveraged some interesting filters here. But this is a classic example of cognitive overload. Perhaps we're doing too much, and we're trying to put too many things on the page, and it creates an imbalance in the page where essentially it's hard to interact with these smaller objects on a page. So let's take this example and bring it through data experience design to deliver something like this, where essentially less is more. We can be more focused on what is the prevailing KPIs of importance, the proper set of filters, and more importantly, designing to the specific media, whether that's in a Surface environment or in this particular instance, an Android phone. You can take this same approach and focus just clearly on the consumers of the data. Again, a different kind of output, a different outcome, and this is all achieved through DXD. But why even bother? The aesthetic, the visual effects are all pretty subjective and in some instances can be quite interesting. But really, why do we do this? Is because information design matters. Where you place elements on the page is important because it provides a clarity to the end user on what is important. And when that information is clear, we ultimately have the opportunity to make better decisions. So what does that really mean? It allows you to visualize the impact of your work. Instead of just focusing on performance marketing, you can focus on driving growth. Because we leverage a system for putting this together for our clients, we focus on delivering against individual goals as well as group accountability with particular metrics. And three, our North Star. And perhaps most importantly, you prioritize that North Star metric: adoption, usage. And so now we come to it. Mastering Datorama Fundamentals is proud to introduce Vimal Epan. Vimal, you have the platform. Take it away.
Thank you, Ross. Hey, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. My name is Vimal. I'm a Senior Technical Manager here at Decision Foundry, and I'm going to take you through today's session. We're going to look at the Harmonization Center, what it is and how do we use it, the various components that go into this, such as the creation of patterns, harmonized dimensions, and how do we classify these dimensions and validate them. We'll also take a look at a live practical use case that'll help us understand how the feature is used within the platform. Now, before we start with that, let's understand what do we mean by harmonization. So harmonization can be defined as any method that is used in the platform to blend or stitch the data sources together from various channels so that we get that complete holistic view of the marketing activity, as opposed to looking at our data sources in silos. We want to make sure that they're all talking to each other and we see that complete picture. The system allows us to do this via multiple tools. We have data fusion, custom classifications, parent-child connections, and the like. And although all the other methods may require some extent of coding knowledge or extra steps that need to be taken place, the Harmonization Center is a one-stop solution that helps us do all of this in a single spot. It helps us streamline this entire activity. And this is done through patterns, that is essentially extractions of meaningful dimensions from your naming conventions. So this can be extracted from campaign names, media buy names, creative names, or a combination of these, so that we can get these dimensions extracted out, and the various sources are going to be classified or harmonized to the extent of these dimensions. Like we said, we'll look at the other components as well as to how do we classify this data and how do we validate whether our output is accurate or not. Now, for our use case to take a look at this, we're going to look at a car rental agency known as Rent-A-Car. Now, Rent-A-Car is a agency that sells cars across multiple manufacturers, and they have various data sources that they work with. So two of those data sources are Facebook and LinkedIn, and for their reporting purposes and for their analysis, they want to make sure that they have one coherent source of truth for all of their data. So essentially, they want to make sure that they have 4 dimensions pulled out of their different sources, such as channel, the actual car model itself, a friendly name for the campaign, and the quarter in which that campaign has been launched. Now, recently, they've also introduced a new source into their marketing mix, which is the Google AdWords source. Now, let's see how we can blend all of this data together. Firstly, to get into your Harmonization Center, you have to get to your Connect and Mix section, head over to Harmonization Center on the left navigation here, and this is your home screen for that, for the Harmonization Center. Let's quickly understand what we are looking at here. So we see patterns on the left here and harmonized dimensions on the right. And the whole idea here is use a source dimension from the naming convention and extract those positions or dimensions out of that source dimension. And thus we get harmonized dimensions that give us combined data that the system automatically aggregates the measurements and provides that information for us to the extent of these harmonized dimensions. I've already created a few over here for Facebook and LinkedIn, but what we are going to look at now is let's create these dimensions for our new source, which is Google AdWords. So firstly, to do that, what you need to do is click this plus icon over here so that we can add a new pattern. We can give the pattern a name. So I'm going to call this master Google Ads pattern. Let's isolate this data with a filter on the data stream level to say we want only the AdWords data set to flow into this. We can click done. And then we need to pick a source dimension that has all of those fields like channel, quarter, campaign that we can pull out of the source dimension, right? So in this case, we've identified that campaign serves this purpose. So we pick the campaign name, and what the system then does is gives us some options of the, some examples of the campaign names that it sees from within the data. And from our side, what we need to understand is what kind of logic we can apply here to extract each of this out. As we can see in the campaign name, for example, in this one, we have the quarter in the first position here. We have the channel in the second position, the car model in the third position, and the campaign and region respectively also, right? So we can pick one of these options and click apply. The system automatically thus uses the identified delimiter that it sees and splits the data into these positions. Now, our job now would be to name these positions. And one thing to note here is if you're doing this for the first time, you will not see a list of dimensions or names populate. Now, the names populate for me here because I've already created a pattern for Facebook and one for LinkedIn. So if you don't have a list, you would actually have to type the word in. But otherwise, if you've already have that, you can just click from one amongst the options there. So this is the quarter. This would be the channel. Here we have the model, so I'll choose the model. And over here we can see the summer and sale is being split by the hyphen, right? So that's another advantage of using this method, which is you can use more than one delimiter. You're not restricted to just using one delimiter to split all the data. So in case you had multiple delimiters, you can input that as well. But in our case here, I don't want to split summer and sale. I want to make sure that's a single thing. So I'll include the underscore delimiter. And another thing to note here is the structure compliance. Now, I didn't need that last position, so I deleted that. And so structure compliance simply means if it's structure compliant enabled, if the system finds an additional position beyond position 5, it's going to turn this entire extraction into a non-valid extraction, because that's a way we can be sure that all of our naming conventions have the exact number of those positions and no unnecessary values are populating. We can disable the structure compliance if necessary, if we might have additional positions and you don't want the system to negate that entire configuration in case a new position is found. We can finish up over here. So we have the campaign, and over here we have a region which isn't part of our Facebook or LinkedIn. So I'm going to name this fresh as a new region position from this. As you can see, you can add more positions as well. So in case at a later point in the campaign's marketing activity, if there are more positions, you can add them as well. At the moment, we don't need that, so I'm going to delete those. And that's it, right? So once this is done, we can click the Done button here. And what the system is doing now is using those positions and blending them with the rest of the harmonized dimensions that we have created. Now we can see we have a brand new pattern created for AdWords, which has 5 positions. As we saw, it has the region as an additional position, again, pulled from the campaign name. And you can see all of these are, now all the data, the impressions, clicks, media cost, all the delivery data are all being aggregated and combined into these harmonized dimensions. Awesome. All right. Now, next up, Rent-A-Car also wants to make sure that they're adding some car model categories as well. As opposed to just looking at their car models, they want to introduce a classification so that they can categorize their models together, right? So this is where the data classification section comes in. So let's head over to harmonized dimensions. The model is where I want to introduce that classification. So let's get into that. All right, and over here we can see, this is just a quick look of the harmonized dimension model that we're looking at. It shows us the various patterns that are acting on this. What is the source dimension in which those extractions are being made, and the positions that we have selected, right? As I mentioned earlier, you can have patterns from multiple dimensions, such as you could have it come from the campaign name, you can have it come from the media buy name or the creative name. And likewise over here, we can allocate the priority just by dragging and dropping the priority of what it should be looking at first. So if I had a campaign name pattern and a media buy name pattern, and the campaign name is on the top, that means it's going to look for the position in the campaign name, and if not found, it's then going to go into the media buy name, like an if-else condition, right? All right, so let's first of all add a classification now. So we can classify this data by simply clicking the Add Classification button. And that should take us to the classification screen. As you see, the left-hand navigation shifted to the data classification section. And how this works is we pick the dimension that we want to classify and simply upload or create our classification file. So in this case, let's call this the car model classification. The dimension is already picked. If you want, you could change the dimension if it's another classification that you want through that dropdown. But our car models are populating here. So far I have a Toyota Corolla model and a Hyundai i10 model. And like I said, you can either upload a file or simply create the file. Let's look at a create file option first, in case you want to manually create a file right here in the system. So essentially what you need to do is, first of all, define a key column simply by doing that. And this way, this column is what's going to be matched by our dimensions. And if a match is found, it then returns the car model category. Right? And then we just key in the values. For instance, this would be Hyundai i10. And the model here would be a Super Mini. And our Toyota Corolla is going to be classified as a family vehicle. And that's it. And you can introduce more to this and save changes. And there you go. You've created your classification. Now let's look at the other method as well, which is way more useful when you have a bunch of classifications to do and you don't want to keep typing all of that in. So you can just drag and drop the file or browse in your system and push in that classification file. I have it over here, so I'm going to drag and drop it in. And there we go. I've set the key as the dimension to match and the value as the dimension after classification. Once this is done, we can click done and it should be set. A few things to note here is, suppose a match is not found, what happens in the system? So MCI typically returns a default string called unclassified, or you have the option of naming it something else, like maybe not valid or needs to be classified or something like that. And the other option is you can return the source dimension itself, right? So whatever the source dimension was from this dimension list, that would be returned if a match was not found. So let's leave it at this for now and click done. And we have created our classification. As you see, it's noted here. At any later point, you can also come back to this classification and update it. A cool thing to note is that as soon as you add a classification file like this, Datorama automatically creates a classification data stream for you. Now, this works like any Total Connect. So you can, automate it via a scheduling of that file, either through an email delivery, other import methods like Google Spreadsheet and the like. So the whole automation process can be maintained as well. Now, the last thing is I also want to show you the data validation section. So back to our harmonized dimensions. And let's work with the car model itself. We have classified into categories. Now let's add some validation files. So validation is a step between the extractions from the patterns and that data classification. So we know that sometimes when we name our campaigns, we could have errors in them, right? Now, in this case, we want to make sure that every third position pulled out of Facebook, LinkedIn, and AdWords patterns must be a car model. And how do we make sure that it is a valid car model? By adding a validation. So we can click the Add Validation button, simply drop in a validation sheet. That's basically an Excel file that has a single column in it that has all the relevant car models. Now, what the system technically does is, as mentioned before, if it does not find one of these after the pattern has extracted from the campaign name, it's going to return a not valid status for that. There we go. We have added a validation as well. And once all this is done, we can save changes. And click done, and we should be good. Now, when we head back to our Harmonization Center, we can see our harmonized dimensions are created from our patterns. We've added a classification, and we've made sure we have validated our extractions from our dimensions. And likewise, you can do the same for all of your dimensions also. The dashboard here also acts as a interface for us to let us know how much of our data is classified and harmonized. If you do see there is different naming conventions being used, and some of the data may not be classified with our rules that we have set. So in those cases, we can probably see like you're at an 80% harmonized, you probably have to harmonize a little more. So you can click the fix and maintain button. The system should let you know which ones aren't harmonized, and then you can likewise fix them by simply exporting a file with the incorrect values, uploading it back with the corrected values, and that way you can fix and maintain your extractions also. Now, finally, let's look at a before and after of what this should be looking like. So with all of this, earlier, right, we would have to look at our individual campaign names with a bunch of fields in there, media buy names, creatives, and it becomes difficult to gauge insights, or it's time consuming. Now, after harmonization, it becomes much easier for us now because we have these harmonized dimensions. Now I can easily look at, all right, what are my car models with their performance, from what channels, across what campaigns, and this way it's easy to see and gain those insights much quicker, right? And the good news is these harmonized dimensions that we create can be used across the platform with any other combination of dimensions and measurements. You can use them in pivot tables, in reports, in visuals, as you see here. And basically, it can be queried anywhere in the platform. Now, since we also included a car model category, we can bring that in as well. Like so, maybe give it a friendly name. Right? Now we can see that data in this also. Hopefully, all of that resonates and you find it useful. Now, all in all, what we looked at is what is the Harmonization Center and how it can help you, the different components that go into it, and finally, how do we execute this, right, in the platform. As a quick reminder, this webinar session will also be found and uploaded in YouTube and in our website at decisionfoundry.com/mastering Datorama. And we also have a wide array of options for clients to get trained on the platform. We have different formats, such as a 10-hour session that we will go through live with you with all of the different components, all the way from integrating your data, harmonizing your data, and visualizing it. So if you're interested, please do reach out to us at Datorama/training within our website, and we'll be glad to work with you over there.